Okay, this is actually kind of insane.
I can buy you time. Remember who I was?
The scene that you are looking at right now is one of the most pivotal moments in the entire show, as what you are looking at right now that has happened to Fatima completely changes our understanding of what is really going on in Fromland. Because what we are really looking at here is simply just undeniable proof of how badly we are being deceived by this place and the entity in control of the monsters. Like, what has to be stated here first and foremost is that we know for a fact that Fatima did not make a deal with anybody or anything, and yet Fatima was still transformed into a monster by this place. And even more specifically, she has been transformed into the same type of creature that the smiley type monsters also are. And I really want you to remember this. Fatima did not make a deal at any point with anybody or anything that exists in this place, and yet she was still transformed into what she is right now. So this is actually crazy, because she has been turned into the same exact thing as the Nightwalkers. And the reason why this matters is this is just one of the very many and very clear signs that we are being deceived and manipulated by this place.
As I saw them, it promised them that they would live forever. They sacrificed their children.
This scene right here is actually very important for us to understand just how badly we are being played and toyed with by the evil forces living in this town. And to understand exactly what I'm talking about, I want you to think back to what happened in this same episode right after Boyd's group pulled the bottle tree. What did we see? We saw the Nightwalkers recoiling in fear and pain when they walked into the sun. And do you know what this tells us? It tells us that just exactly as many people have theorized since the very first season, and especially after season 2 episode 1, where we saw them sleeping in those damp dirty ass caves like filthy animals, is that the Nightwalkers have the same exact weakness as vampires. So what they should have done, if the people of this town had even a shred of intelligence in their brain as soon as they found them sleeping there, is just as we've always said. They should have dragged them out while they were asleep to burn them with the sunlight, which it has always been clear that they were afraid of. But most importantly, what this moment really tells us is that the reason why Fatima was likely controlled through Smiley into killing Tilly, which is the main reason she ended up going into isolation and hiding herself in the shack where Elgin eventually found her and then dragged her into the root cellar, is because the kimono demon, who could easily be the entity in control of the monsters himself, was terrified of what would happen if Smiley was to have been reborn in Colony House during the daytime. Basically, I'm saying that Fatima's isolation was planned specifically to prevent the people of the town from finding out the Nightwalker's weakness to sunlight, because Smiley would have had to run all the way from Colony House to the underground tunnels if Elgin didn't kidnap Fatima and throw her into the root cellar. And therefore, Smiley would have obviously been attacked by the people when they saw him collapsing in the sunlight out of pain. So everything leading up to Smiley's rebirth was specifically planned by this place and the entity in control of it to ensure that Smiley would be delivered safely. But what I want you to focus on right now is this scene right here where Marielle gets killed off in the most ridiculous way. What did we see Fatima doing? We saw her shrieking at Smiley, and then he stopped his advance towards them. Now, what I want to point out here is that Fatima was not controlling Smiley, because way too many people think that's what was happening, but it's not. You can clearly see that Smiley only decides to leave because he thought Fatima's transformation was amusing to him. And how we know this to be true is that Smiley specifically says that he thinks whatever it is that's going on with Fatima is interesting to him right before he decided to leave the clinic. So Fatima was not in control of Smiley. He just decided to leave on his own so that he could find Fatima at some other point in the future. But none of what we're talking about here is even the most shocking thing in this episode, which I would say is that at this point, we can finally admit that the writers of this show have a very nasty habit of seemingly intentionally building up specific plot lines in the viewer's mind when they never had any intention to actually deliver on the expectation. Like, what was the point of having Acosta spending multiple episodes down in the basement of Colony House in this season, therefore making people believe that her plotline would be directly connected to uncovering Sophia as an imposter? And then at the end of the season, lo and behold, Acosta's plotline had absolutely nothing to do with what was going on with Sophia. In fact, Acosta didn't have a plotline at all. Instead, what should have been done by Acosta was given to Elgin, who then ended up being killed off in one of the most disrespectful deaths in the entire show, despite being such a prominent character. And I dare say that Elgin's death had less of an impact than Dale getting sent into the pool. And it's the same exact thing as Marielle, despite them supposedly being meant to be more important characters in the story. But how Acosta was handled in this season is far from the only plotline that they specifically built up that received absolutely no progression by the end of the season. Another amazing example is how they had the man in yellow interacting with the figure of the ballerina in the diner, making you believe that they were finally going to address the music box. And guess what? They didn't. The phenomena of something somehow banging the cabinets in both the Matthews house and Colony house also clearly hasn't been addressed in any way. Everything going on with Fatima's golem was just trash. They didn't even tell us what the third thing that Victor was told by the boy Mite after the massacre even was. The Lake of Tears and Jim's ghost feels like an afterthought in every way. Donna's heart attack was completely meaningless as well. And obviously I'm still waiting to see whatever it was that the man in yellow was talking about when he said that he was going to make the townspeople tear each other apart, because I didn't see any of that, because that definitely did not happen. But the most perfect example of what I'm talking about is the vision that we see Tabitha having of Victor's mom arriving into the town. This is definitely the most revealing way of how the writers of this show completely mislead and therefore disrespect the audience. They seemingly intentionally not only had Victor's mom driving a car with a different interior than the one in the junkyard that both Tabitha and Victor said belonged to her, but they also didn't show if there was anyone in the back seat. And then most of all, they filmed it in such a way as to make you believe that one of the women or the girls seen with the blurred out faces would have been the original Sophia, i.e. the person that the man in yellow is pretending to be. And so many people in this community expected Tabitha to end up having a vision of that memory in full and be the one to expose Sophia as an imposter to the people of the town. And guess what? It never happened. In fact, they didn't even show us the full version of that memory that Tabitha was having. And this, it's nothing new for From. They did the same exact thing in the third season multiple times, like how they built up Jade snapping those effigy totems as if he had just released a monster similar to the cicada/music box, and it wasn't addressed until years later in season 4 when it turned out that the colonial man was just a past version of himself. So all of the hype and how they made it seem like he had done something crazy in that scene was completely meaningless. And this is actually a very common theme with this show. The mystery is always better than the reveal. Like, did you notice how they specifically had Victor's dad's fake hospital visions saying that his daughter, Victor's sister, was going to be flying in to see him? And then, lo and behold, Victor's sister did not make a single appearance at any point in this season. And that's because Victor's sister is more than likely already dead. But the writers have been sprinkling lines like how she was always so good at hide and seek and how Victor wasn't sure if he actually found her body or not throughout the show to make you believe otherwise. But the reality is the eventual reveal of what happened to Victor's sister is going to be 10 times as disappointing as Acosta's plotline in season 4. Like, did you notice how despite everything that happened in this season, we are still 1,000 miles away from identifying what caused Victor's massacre and how everyone was killed seemingly at the same exact time, which is honestly further away than where we were in the third season. Not to mention, the lighthouse has completely disappeared from the story in every way, despite the fact that the first time we ever saw the lighthouse was way back in season 1. We still have no confirmation of any kind of why it was ever present in the show. There has also been no progression in the plotline of whatever it was that carried Boyd and Sarah's tent in season 1, or why Boyd was seeing 2 different rings in this season, or why the man in yellow has bags filled with teeth all over the place, why Julie specifically out of the 3 who were chained up in the dungeon can story walk. Heck, they didn't even give us a clue as to what the man in yellow's plan for Sarah is that he was alluding to when saying that he was just testing Sarah's faith by telling her to drink from the glass in the diner. And of course, we were given literally no progression in any way in the plotline of the old man chained up in the dungeon and how he is somehow connected to the man in yellow. And that's before we even start talking about how Julie's story walking ability has been completely tossed aside like a piece of trash. Like, they had her cutting her hair and doing all of that stuff just for her to not end up story walking in any way for the entire second half of the season. It's so dumb. And the promotional video that they posted on Instagram talking about alternate timelines, More than likely, there are no alternate timelines in this show. They are just misleading you into believing that there is.
Welcome back to Julie's book club, Flight of the Chronocle. It taught me how to story walk. It's just one of those books that like transcends timelines, if you really know what I mean. Transcends timelines. Timelines.
Don't you recognize me?
They take the form of somebody who that character would probably be close with. So Julie sees a young guy that maybe she knows from school. They take the form of somebody.
And one thing I have said many times before, and I will say it again, is that the people who came into the town from the bus are exactly the same as the people from the tail section of the plane on Lost. They serve no purpose in the story, and all of them could have been replaced by characters who are already in the show in season 1, and nothing would have changed in any way whatsoever. Like Elgin, Bacta, Marielle, Randall. There was clearly never any sort of plan for any of these characters or what their role should be in the story. And the biggest mistake the writers ever made in this show is when they killed off the most impactful character from the bus, which was of course Tilly, because that was what sealed the fate of everyone who came in on the bus permanently. Fact of the matter is, the reason why people cling to Tilly so hard even to this day is because she was absolutely magnetic in every way. And let me tell you right now, Tilly being revealed to be the entity in control of the monsters would be the best rated episode in the entire show, and it wouldn't even be close. Sophia acts too much like a child to be taken seriously, and the man in yellow is just too eccentric both in design and personality. Tilly, the kimono, and the ballerina were the only should-have-been villains in the show who actually acted like what you would expect from a millennia-old deity that wanted to fuck over the people of the town. Every move that they made, especially Tilly, felt like it had a reason, and the level of accuracy in their actions always felt surgical every single time. In comparison, the man in yellow's work feels very sloppy, like how he chose to disguise himself as one of the few people who ever came to Fromland who not only had their picture taken, but also had their photograph survive decades after their death. He just comes off as an idiot. It also has to be addressed that this episode did not change anything like what we were led to believe that it would. The boy in white being in a competition with the man in yellow was always the default assumption as presented by the narrative. So him saying the yellow man is gonna lose doesn't really change much of anything. We already knew this show is made by the same people from Lost, so seeing that same exact storyline playing out in From as well is not a surprise in any way, and I would not be surprised if they also eventually reveal that the two of them are somehow twins as well, because that was also a plot line in Lost between the evil entity and the good entity. But canonically speaking, there is no confirmation of any kind whatsoever of where the boy in white came from or where the man in yellow came from either. In fact, this episode gave us even more questions than answers about the both of them. Like, we are clearly meant to assume that the boy in white is not the one in control of the faraway trees, because if he was, then he could have just teleported the talismans back to the townspeople after the yellow man threw them in there. And honestly, I don't think the yellow man is in control of them either, but this just brings up even more questions, like why was the boy in white telling Sarah and Boyd to go into the faraway tree in the first season if he cannot control them? And even when you look at the clearly premeditated earthquakes and red lightning strikes or the sky turning to night in an instant, all of that was happening when the man in yellow was talking to Elgin in the diner, so I don't think he's the one who's doing all of that either. In fact, they didn't even confirm if he's the being that the Nightwalkers made a deal with, let alone whether or not he is the one in control of the Nightwalkers. Heck, we don't even know which of the two of them wanted Tabitha to bring Victor's dad into the town, or if it was just a happy coincidence for the man in yellow that Victor's dad happened to be there when something pulled Tabitha back to the town. The talismans being stolen felt like something that should have happened in the middle of the season, not as the season finale. Sophia being the man in yellow should have been revealed in like episode 7, because another season of this ridiculous dance of, is this the episode he'll be discovered or is it the next one, is completely fucking insane. And I have no idea why they're thinking that they're gonna do the same thing. It's gonna somehow be as compelling as it was in the beginning of this season. All in all, this felt like an incredibly stagnant season, because even the fact that the people of the town are being watched by this place, which is something that we learned about like 5 years ago with the voice on the radio calling Jim Matthews, even that still hasn't been accepted as fact by the townspeople. They're still running around as if they're not being watched, like they're idiots. Not to mention how ridiculous it is that whoever's sending these earthquakes had the accuracy to precisely target them in such a way as to block Jade and Tabitha in the cell located in the underground tunnels. But whoever that being is couldn't do the same thing by collapsing parts of the underground tunnels to trap Boyd and the others when they were rescuing Jade and Tabitha at the end of the episode. The rules of this place, they just don't make any sense. It's like the writers are just making everything up as they go. It's the same thing with the man in yellow's constantly fluctuating level of knowledge. 1 second he knows everything about everyone, the next he doesn't even know that Jade and Tabitha will be the one going into the tunnels. Like, I specifically made a video ago about Marielle possibly being evil, and I specifically said in that video that if Marielle did not turn out to have been secretly evil the entire time, that there would be no point in her character And guess what? I was correct, because I could see the writing on the wall even then, that at least in my opinion, there clearly has never been a plan for this character. And even when you look at Elgin, Randall, Victor's dad, Acosta, all of these characters are treated like trash. Even Donna didn't do much of anything in this season. So I'm definitely going to say this is definitely the worst season finale in the entire show, and it's not even close. And can we talk about why Boyd is the one in the posters for the show when he hasn't done anything since all the way back in season 2 when he freed Julie and the others from the cicadas? In season 3, Boyd was just getting bullied by the Nightwalkers repeatedly, and he ended up torturing Elgin, which wasn't even a good thing. And then in season 4, what did he do? Nothing. Because he's been sidelined for Jade and Tabitha. Heck, they didn't even address the visions he was having of Abby and the massacre and the new massacre or whatever the hell was going on. Who knows what was going on there? I don't know, because they never explained it. However, what matters most here is that you go watch this video right here to see my explanation on why Fatima was transformed into a Nightwalker despite the fact that she never made a deal or sacrificed a child for immortality.